Okay, I think we'll get started. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. My name is Raquel Meshalem Gately, and I am a psychologist from Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center in Boston and co-director of the Beth Israel Deaconess site for the New England Mental Health Technology Transfer Center, or Mhttc for short. Please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat box, and I'll just review a few housekeeping items before we begin. So participant microphones have been muted at entry, and you'll be able to unmute them during the discussion portion. During the presentation, if you have any technical difficulties or questions about the topic, please use the chat box. This webinar is being recorded and will be available for viewing at a later time on the Mhttc website. To reach us after the webinar, you can email newengland@mhttcnetwork.org. Next slide. This slide provides a description of our disclaimers for Mhttc. We move to the next slide now. The Mhttc network uses affirming, respectful, and recovery-oriented language in all activities. That language is strengths-based and hopeful, inclusive and accepting of diverse cultures, genders, perspectives, and experiences, healing-centered and trauma-responsive, inviting to individuals participating in their own journeys, person-first and free of labels, non-judgmental and avoiding assumptions, respectful, clear, and understandable, and consistent with our actions, policies, and products. So with that, we'll move on now to the presentation. It is my pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar, which is part of an important series of initiatives that we have launched through the New England Mhttc to help support the well-being of all members of the healthcare workforce experiencing an increase in stress-related psychological difficulties resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, after almost 2 years of working within this crisis and managing the same types of personal challenges we all have, healthcare workers are experiencing higher levels of stress, vicarious trauma, anxiety, depression, substance abuse, and burnout. Several approaches are available to mitigate as well as prevent these consequences. These include a variety of mental health self-care approaches, some of which we've already addressed through our webinar series, such as mindfulness, yoga, music, positivity, and acceptance and commitment-based practices, and some of which are upcoming, including sleep hygiene, meditation, and spirituality. We will be regularly updating these initiatives on our website, and we welcome any suggestions for other resources that we can provide. So to that end, I am delighted to welcome my colleague and mentor, Dr. Mhttc Keshavan, to address this important topic through the use of art, specifically how the brain processes art, how art impacts the brain, the relationship between art and mental health, and how art can be therapeutic. So just a very brief introduction for Dr. Keshavan. If I tried to list all of his accomplishments and areas of expertise, including his artistic talents, which you will soon see, we'd be here a very long time. Dr. Keshavan is the Stanley Kopp Professor of Psychiatry at the Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center and Harvard Medical School. He is also the academic head for the department and the director of our Beth Israel Deaconess site for the New England Mhttc. Dr. Keshavan is closely involved in research in neurobiology of psychosis, especially as it pertains to first episode psychotic disorders. And he is a board certified psychiatrist. Today, he is going to share his expertise regarding art, brain, and healing. Dr. Keshavan?
Thank you very much, Raquel, for that kind introduction. And good morning, everyone. It's very nice to see a good number of you already have logged in, and despite this being a Thanksgiving week, it's really nice to see you all, and hope you're all doing well under these rather stressful pandemic circumstances, and hope you're all in good health and vaccinated and boosted and all that. So as Raquel mentioned, our goal in this series, webinar series on wellness, is designed to address the ongoing second pandemic, namely the mental health pandemic and the stress that the pandemic brings to all of us, whether we have a diagnosed illness or not, and especially for the frontline healthcare providers. And this is what our series is designed for. And in this series, we have had a number of previous presentations that have focused on what I would call resilience tools that we all can kind of discover within ourselves in a way to improve our ability to cope with stress and actually grow from this. That is, growth from stress, as well as one of the previous webinars had pointed out. And in this series, we have had discussions of yoga, of meditation, of acceptance and commitment therapy, and music, and so forth, and more to come on sleep and substance abuse and spirituality and so forth. But today, what I kind of ventured to do, this is a presentation that is very new to me. Just to point out, I'm a psychiatrist, as Raquel said, and I'm very interested in the brain. I'm a neuroscientist, but I also dabble in art. I can't say I'm an artist by my primary profession, but from my childhood, I have been dabbling in initially doodling and then subsequently what you might call a glorified doodling, if you will. And here are some sketches of where I am and where I came from. So this is the Harvard Medical School in the middle, the Massachusetts Mental Health Center on the left. And at the top on the right, you see the National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences in Bangalore in India, where I first trained. And then bottom right is the University of Pittsburgh, where I used to be for a good number of years before coming to Boston. I don't have any relevant disclosures, just to point out that my only disclosure is that I dabble in art. I'm not an art therapist. Again, I need to point that out to people. So, we talked about the pandemic-related stress, and what do we all do to reduce stress? So maybe, Vanessa, if you could put up the first survey. Vanessa? Okay, there we are. Well, I'm already instantaneously seeing the results here. It looks like pretty much most of you like taking walks in nature. About half of you like to doodle. About a quarter of you like to sketch, and a quarter of you paint. And about 10% of you sculpt. and about 40% of you go to museums. So visual arts is big out there as a way of relieving our stress. So with that as the background, how, as Raquel said at the beginning, the three main things that I'm going to be, does everyone see the results? Has this been shared? Okay, good. So now moving on to my next slide. Why doodling or another visual arts is a stress buster? How does it reduce stress is the first point of what I'm going to be talking about. Secondly, why do all of us want to go to museums and take nature walks and so on? Thirdly, we're all wired to process art in our brains. And what does art do to the brain? And how does art help in our daily life? So these are the key questions that I'm going to be addressing as we go forward. So let me, I'm very fond of this artist who I'm sure many of you know, Bob Ross. And I like to start off with a little video graphic of his painting. And if you gaze it closely, it's very, it's almost mesmerizing how he does his strokes with his painting knife. He draws that one line, gets his color from the palette and draws that one line on that place where the other tree should be. And he's confident that it's going to become a tree. And, just keep looking at it. And what are the key things that cross your mind? First of all, he's paying full attention. He's focusing. Secondly, he is producing something that it didn't exist before. In other words, this is creativity. And thirdly, he is skilled in doing this. This is challenging to do, but this challenge is matched by his skill. So he's at that point where the skill and the challenge are in sync with each other. And then each stroke he makes is a reward in itself. So there is the input that he's taking from the palette. And then, his brain thinks about where the next stroke should be. And then he paints it. And so there is that almost simultaneous synchronicity between his input and output, between his sensory system and his motor system. And that's immediately rewarding. He doesn't need to, get a prize or be, acclaimed in order to get joy out of this. The joy is that stroke of paint itself. Take another example. So here's a golfer. It could be Tiger Woods. It could be anybody else. It could be any of you. Just watch what he does. He has this stroke of the golf ball. He nudges it. He knows exactly that it would go into the hole. And there is that same kind of focus of attention and then the action immediately leading to a reward. And again, he doesn't have to win a championship. He's already got his reward out of this. Another example, these cartoons of two musicians, or a listener and a musician. You can see how they are focusing and immersed, and the joy is instantaneous. So these are three examples, and I want to ask you as to your experience as to how you feel when you see these kind of activities. Maybe one of you could say something. Raquel, can you say something? What is common across these three experiences?
It feels so calm and relaxed when I watch those.
Great. Wonderful. Anything else?
See a lot of people talking about happiness and joy,
yep.
presence, accomplish, confidence.
Yes, exactly. So these are characteristics of these experiences which are characterized by intense focus, almost like immersive focus. You get into it and you're producing something that didn't exist before, a new experience or a new painting, new tree on that canvas. There is an immediate reward. The task is an end in itself. And because you don't need any other reward, you don't have to put your ego into it. You don't have to get a reward, or you don't have to win a war, or to win a game and things like that. So there's no need for an ego there. And also, Raquel, did you feel like, it was boring? Were you waiting for your clock? Or it felt like time flew during this time?
It felt like time flew for me. Absolutely.
So yeah, basically, whether you are the doer or the observer, you're getting into a zone here. And that is what is called flow. What is flow? So when there is a task and you're skilled at it, but it is also difficult, there is a certain zone where your skill and the challenge are both kind of in sync with each other. That is the zone called flow. And when it is too difficult and your skill doesn't match the difficulty, it causes frustration and anxiety. Or when it is too easy, it may lead to boredom. But when you're in this zone, when you're engaged in an activity and you're fully engaged and it is within your skill level or just at the edge of your skill level, that is what leads to the sense of gratification and happiness. So that's the concept I wanted to illustrate so far in this process. So this is not a new idea. Mhttc Csikszentmihalyi. It's a complicated sounding last name. So he prefers to explain to his people, his listeners, how to pronounce his name as Csikszentmihalyi. Sadly, he passed away just a couple of weeks ago. This psychologist introduced the concept of flow, where he said flow is like being completely involved in an activity for its own sake. The ego falls away, time flies, every action, movement, and thought follow inevitably from the previous one, like playing jazz. So this is what he referred to as flow. Now, I'm going to take a little break and get off of my laptop and go to my iPad and engage us, you and I, in an exercise of artwork. And you will see what I mean when it comes to the concept of flow. So let me stop sharing here. And I'll put myself on mute. So I am going to share my slides now, share my iPad content. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is to share my Sketch app. Raquel, do you see my screen, which should be a whiteboard?
I see a whiteboard on there.
Okay, great. So I'm going to do a quick sketch on, the reason I showed this is this is something so simple any of you could do. And this app is called Sketch Club. It could be freely downloaded onto your phone or to your iPad. And you could be sitting in your nature walk, watching something, or you could be, just sitting in your own home, trying to imagine a peaceful scene. Raquel or Angie, could you say what you'd like to sketch? What would you like? What environment would you like to be in? What surroundings would you like to be in and be able to sketch?
Sand.
Sand?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, keep going.
Ocean.
Okay.
Maybe a beach hut. Beach chair.
Beach chair, okay.
Person with a laptop, maybe.
All right, okay, let's do that. So you sitting there on a beach chair with a laptop, right? Mm-hmm. So I have a white screen here, white canvas. I'll make it into a dark canvas. Now I'm going to choose a brush. Let's choose a brush and a large size brush like that maybe, and a deep blue sky. Let's do that.
Okay.
Okay. So now all I'm doing is making your sky for you. And you said sand, right?
Yes.
White sand?
Blue.
Blue sand? No, I have not seen blue sand. You mean orangish, white?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, okay. There you go. And let's do some sand here. Beautiful white sand. Okay. You said ocean, right?
Yes.
So let's choose a brush that actually gives us something like a horizon with an edge of the ocean. So something like this, and then you need to choose the color for it. I'm going to choose light blue for this. So something like that. So you have the ocean right there. And then go back to your sand, and the sand needs to have a beach border. Or maybe a little bit more flowing like this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there you go. So that's your ocean border, and you want to get some waves there as well, right?
Right.
Here you go. And you want some trees?
Yeah.
Okay, palm trees or coconut trees.
Yes.
Right. So I choose a different kind of pen for that. So let's choose a pen. And I like to choose something like this Ripper pen. Okay. maybe a little thicker. And then, of course, you need the leaves for that. And you said this is the evening, Angie? Setting sun?
Yes.
Okay, let's try that.
What about a beach hut?
Yes. And the sun is setting. So there is the golden sun there. Choose the right pen for it. And then the sun has to be reflected. See, if you make mistakes, no problem. You know, these apps will give you the ability to correct yourself. So you have the setting sun. And then when there is the setting sun, you have a reflection of that bright light onto everything that is facing that sun. So you have the sun is reflected right there. And then to give you a three-dimensional experience of that, you have a little shadow that the trees cast. Right? Okay, now you are sitting on a beach chair, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I wanted a beach hut, but.
A beach hut?
Mm-hmm.
Could try that. Just give me a second.
Okay.
So there you are, Angie.
Okay.
Okay, and you wanted a hut.
Yes.
There you go. So there is the hut there. So let's say I made a mistake. I hit a wrong pen and I smudged this. something got smudged. No problem. You can correct that as well. So you can make it into an artistic smudge. So just make it smudge all over the place. Now your tree, your ocean, they all became kind of a like a stormy day, a stormy evening, so to speak. And now so Angie has to have an umbrella now because it's likely to be raining right now.
Yeah.
And then that's in the middle of rain as well. So you basically got yourself another rendering of this artistic experience. In a stormy evening, you're sitting with probably cloudy skies. The skies are cloudy and it's about to rain. So you got an entirely different kind of experience here. So I'll stop sharing my slides here at this point. And I'll go back to my laptop. Okay, so I'm back here. So Angie, maybe you can say, what was your experience when you watched me do this and watched yourself participating in that activity? Give us a sense.
Well, sense of time went away. And I felt
yeah, in fact, sense of time went away for me as well. Already we are 11:30. Wow. I didn't even notice my time.
And I felt in the moment.
You felt very much, totally in the present. I was not thinking about what happened before earlier this morning and what was going to come after this. So I was totally in the moment, and I'm sure you were.
Mm-hmm. And I felt like I was doing a sketching.
You felt like you were doing it. That's wonderful. Yeah. These are exactly the kind of things that you want to hear and what people experience when they engage in an artistic activity. So let me go back to my slides. So, okay. Thanks, Angie. Do you see the slides now?
Yes.
Yeah, so this is Csikszentmihalyi. So why does this make us, why is this better than other kinds of happiness? There are two kinds of happiness that psychologists talk about. There is the extrinsic happiness and the intrinsic happiness, and extrinsic motivation and intrinsic motivation. The kid who is playing here for winning, look at his face. And the kid who is playing just because he wants to enjoy that, look at his face. So when you engage in an activity that is inherently motivating and is, you're enjoying it irrespective of whether you're going to win or not, that is intrinsic motivation. And also you see in this example, this intrinsic experience of happiness is what is generated by flow. And the happiness, as you see here, is more sustained and it is under our own control. Whereas the happiness that is dependent on somebody, liking your work or somebody giving you a thumbs up sign or some extrinsic reward like that, that is transient. It is dependent on external factors. So that's the main point I want to make in this slide. So the summary up to this point in my slides is any activity with full engagement can lead to a state of flow. And this state of flow is reflected by a balance between your skill and the challenge level. There is rapid feedback. The task is an end in itself. Action and awareness merge into one. Sense of time goes away. You don't worry about failure because every failure is an opportunity. And ego goes away. And that is what would lead to an intrinsic happiness and reduced stress. So that's the first part of my talk today. The second part I'm going to talk about is why do we go to museums? Why do we take nature walks? Apart from all its other benefits of exercise and so on, why does it calm our minds? What does nature do? Or the works of art that you see in museums do to your brain? And the brain is kind of wired to observe beauty, and doing so releases pleasurable chemicals in the brain and also lights up the happiness circuits in our brain. And that's the main point of the second part of what I'm going to talk about. And a number of scientists have written about it and about the loss of aesthetics, if you will, the loss of art, what the brain likes to experience. One of them is V.S. Ramachandran, a neuroscientist, and the other is Eric Kandel, a psychiatrist, neuroscientist who got the Nobel Prize in the 1990s. They both wrote about these kinds of what makes the artistic experience and how it impacts our brain. So I added a few things to those ideas, and here are a few things I want to reflect on. So take a look at this picture. I want you to put in your chat box, what do you think this is? As quickly as you can. I'm not able to see the chats here. Maybe one of you can read the more common ones that are coming out. Raquel?
Yeah, it looks like we have a lot of duck and rabbit. I see goose, a variety of birds.
Right. Okay. Well, the most common experience is either it's a rabbit or a duck or goose. Now, try this experiment. Can you see both the rabbit and the duck at the same time? It's very hard to do so. Even though 66% of you said that you could see the rabbit and the duck at the same time, I have not been able to do that. When in that instantaneous moment, when you see the rabbit, the duck disappears. And when you see the duck, the rabbit disappears. Just do it again. It makes it's a challenge to the brain, and such challenges can be quite reinforcing, if you will. So the first law that I would say of aesthetics is that gives the brain some work, like thinking outside the box, shifting its perspective can be quite inspiring or stimulating. There are other examples for this. On the left, you see, so Angie, what do you see on the left?
I see a woman playing a trumpet.
A woman playing a trumpet, or is it a man with a trumpet and a woman, depending on when and your particular perspective of seeing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not a woman playing a trumpet, but I guess it is a man with a trumpet and a woman. Okay. Likewise, on the right side, Raquel, what do you see?
I see a woman, looks like she's sniffing something. She's wearing a hat, maybe with a feather on the top.
A young woman, right?
Yeah.
Do you see an old woman as well?
Well, now that you mention it, I do. But at first I was drawn to seeing the younger woman first.
Right. Well, the main point is perceptual problem solving is reinforcing to the brain. Let's go to another little exercise. There are two sets of pictures here, the left and the right. I'm going to ask the question to all of you in a survey that Vanessa is going to put up. Which one do you like better, the left collection of pictures or the right side? And why? Yeah, the right side is immensely more, most people like the right one better. Why might that be? The reason for that is that the brain likes to create or see something where none exists. So the picture that you saw had a human face. Even though there is no human face there, the way the pictures are organized, there is an appearance of a human face there. So it's like watching figures in clouds. The brain likes to create. The brain likes to see patterns, and that can be inherently enjoyable. So this is rule number 2. Brain likes to create and to close.
Right, and I think people were commenting on the chat that they see a person, it's more meaningful, and that's why they were drawn to that.
Yeah, absolutely. We also always like to see meaning. The whole enterprise of art and poetry, they're all based on identifying meaning in things that look otherwise random. These two pictures, which one do people like better? And Vanessa is going to put up a survey, left or right? Vanessa? Well, the answer here is majority of you like the right side, and maybe I did not mask the left side face well enough or artistically enough. But the most typical answers that one gets are that people like partially covered objects better than fully evident pictures. And the brain likes to leave more for the imagination, but that was not the case in this particular group, and maybe it's the nature of the figures that I showed. But this is one law that scientists often find as being aesthetically pleasing. Now let's look at these two pictures. Which one do you like better? Look at the left one and the right one, and Vanessa is going to ask a survey for you. So the answers are stabilizing to be right side more often is pleasing to the eye compared to the left. And this is exactly what people see. There is this other law of aesthetics, which suggests that the eyes like not to be obstructed. And whenever there is a horizon, when I painted the ocean for Angie, the trees were on this side. If they were in the middle, they would probably not have been appreciated as much, just like in this one, this example. Eyes like to travel. They like no obstruction. Let's look at this example. Which one do people like better, left or right? So the answers here are again consistent with the laws of aesthetics that have been described. And that is the law of asymmetry. The law of symmetry, the principle of symmetry. So evolutionarily, humans are wired to appreciate symmetry. And these kinds of surveys always show that symmetrical objects are seen as more visually pleasing than asymmetric, even though we'll have to say that modern art does not exactly follow this rule. Like, for example, Picasso. Asymmetry can also be evocative. Asymmetry can trigger some centers in your brain because it's kind of shocking and unexpected. And so that may be another way of releasing those excitatory chemicals in the brain. Which picture is more Nixon-like? Or which one do you like better? So let's put it that way. Vanessa, survey. Interesting. So people like pictures where the particular characteristic of the individual is highlighted. But in this case, everyone seems to like the more, or the majority like to see the more generic average picture of Nixon as opposed to the caricatured version of this. So again, it may be following the symmetry principle. Humans like to appreciate more average looking objects or faces compared to those that are highly skewed or asymmetrical. The brain also likes to accentuate. This was shown in many experiments over the last several decades that, when we see something that is an object of importance or an individual of importance, we always focus on the most prominent characteristic of that individual or object. And for example, if there is a duck with a prominent red beak, the ducklings are attracted to the duck, and they get attracted to any horizontal rectangular red object. And the more rectangular it is, the more they get drawn to it, and so on. So scientists who study aesthetics, or what is called neuroaesthetics, like Ramachandran, they talk about this principle of aesthetics, which is called, there is a name for it, the law of peak shifting. So law of accentuation. And so here is a famous painting by Mark Rothko, an American artist. Why is this so famous? What is unique about modern art? So here is that seventh law, which is law of isolation. When the artist emphasizes a single source of information, such as whether it's color, form, or motion, or emotion, and deliberately places down and deletes other sources. The brain likes to accentuate. The brain likes to simplicity. The brain likes to focus on one modality of perceptual input to the exclusion of others. In this case, just color and form. Whereas other artists, for example, Jackson Pollock, why do people pay money to go to museums and look at Jackson Pollock? He has made an art of basically focusing on just color and remove all form altogether. Or an entire variety of artistic school has developed focused on just the play of light and dark. This is Impressionism, like what you see with Claude Monet, for example. I like to think that Impressionism developed because of myopia, and they must have forgotten their glasses or didn't have glasses at that time. So they learned to portray pictures just on blotches of paint and color, light dark contrast. Here's another example of that. It's just splotches of paint. If you go closer, you don't almost see anything. You have to go far away and look at it. It's just a play of color, light, and contrast, which the brain likes to see. Or the brain might focus on simple elements of form. Break down perceptions into simple elements, like simple, two-dimensional representation or three-dimensional representation of cubes, which is what Picasso did, and that became another school of art called Cubism. Or the focus might be on movement. And here's a sketch that I made some time ago on movement. Or it could be on emotions, as this William Turner's Snowstorm shows. Or it could be, as Picasso's Blue Period showed, use of color and wavy lines. On the left is Picasso's Blue Period. On the right is Edgar Monk's Scream, which depicts depression. Of course, artists can, or artistic viewers can get engrossed in no form or color. I mean, this is like a meditation where there are no thoughts at all. So that can also be an artistic experience. So viewing art can help unplug your mind and focus on something or even nothing, and can help challenging our minds and strengthen creativity. It may also release stress hormones and pleasure hormones. So in summary, up to this point, The brain likes to think outside the box. The brain likes to create meaning where none exists, fill up the blanks, leave more for the imagination, follow the vantage point. The brain likes asymmetry, and the brain also likes to accentuate or emphasize. What does art do to the brain, and how does it generate pleasure and happiness? There are three things. One is, as you saw in what I was doing in my sketching, as well as what you saw in Bob Ross, as well as in the golfer, as well as in the musician, what art does and what all other enterprises like music and sport do is to connect different parts of our brain and create an integrated experience. And yoga is one of those. And here is a yoga picture that I created inside the brain to depict the integrative ability of yoga. The word yoga actually means unification of different parts of our brain, different parts of brain, body, and mind and spirit. The brain also grows. And here is a picture of the brain building its muscle through creative experience. It's got a principle called plasticity. And how does all this is by releasing, there are a number of chemicals, including dopamine, which is released whenever there is an unexpected pleasure, like that asymmetric face or a cartoonistic nose. Releases hormones, neurotransmitters like dopamine, which pick up on unpredicted experiences. On the other hand, predicted experiences, which are in tune with what you want to see and leads to satisfaction, release another neurotransmitter called serotonin. There are other pleasure neurotransmitters as well, oxytocin, which is a hormone that is released when you're attached to another person with love, maternal love or romantic love, and so on. Endorphins, which are internal hormones that release pain. So how can we use art in our daily life? All of us are endowed with our innate ability to doodle, sketch, color. It's important to have an open mind, stay in the moment. Mistakes are okay. Every mistake could be an opportunity. Sharing your work with other people that you love, going to museums, taking nature walks, they're all important. I end with a summary here. Art is a way to create moments of mindful flow, and appreciating and engaging creative experiences can induce positive emotions. Flow can both enhance positive emotions, brain plasticity, connectivity, and integration. And you don't have to be a Picasso to gain the benefits of art. Last slide. Where did you find that, says the person on the left? I've been searching for it everywhere, namely happiness. The right side person says, I created it myself. Happiness can be created. Thank you all. I apologize. I kind of didn't even look at time, and we may have very little time left for questions or comments or thoughts. Let me stop my sharing. Yeah, I did stop my sharing. Okay.
I think I had the same problem, Dr. Keshavan. I got so lost in your presentation, enjoying every moment of it, that I looked and realized that we're almost at 12 already. But really appreciate this incredibly informative, helpful, and engaging presentation. And I'm wondering if we might have time for just a couple of questions if attendees can stay on for a little while longer. I did see there was a few questions, by the way, about the app you were using. I guess it's the Sketch app, which is...
It is called Sketch Club. Sketch Club. It's on iPhones, but there are several others.
Okay, and the one that you use is, you have to pay for that one, correct?
It's like $2.99 or something like that.
Okay.
It's very cheap, yeah.
Okay, but there sounds like there's other free apps available that are like that for students. Wonderful. Yeah, and again, a lot of comments about what a wonderful presentation.
Someone is asking, is there some art after? Is there a second part to this talk? I had not planned, but would be happy to hear any ideas.
If you're open to that, Dr. Keshavan, we would love to have you come back and do a part 2.
Thank you so much. And for everyone to know, this will be recorded and will be on the SAMHSA website. Was there a question?
Well, this is Kim. Hi. Wonderful presentation. I would be interested in this. It came up a little bit in the talk, and it's a little bit different than art, but the discussion about nature and the effects of nature on the brain. And as you know, there's this kind of, growing, bit of research in terms of green space, what nature does. And it's a little bit different than art in terms of the nature of the engagement. But I would be, very interested in hearing more about that, knowing very little of the science and how it works, but having a great sense of it living here in Maine, experientially of its importance.
Yeah, so that's an excellent point, Kim. So there is that, as you said, a significant body of literature that green space is good for mental health. And how it does that, is it because of the visually pleasing green color, or is it the perception that you are just a small part of a large, nature and the realization of one's own perspective as being as being a part of something large. They all might be factors, but this is probably another talk in itself.
Yeah, I was suggesting it as another talk by you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think somebody else commented regarding nature, that taking a walk in nature lets you use or engage all of your senses. So that may be one of the more powerful aspects of that. And I know there's a whole area of research now, I think it's called forest therapy, right? So just
one of my patients, whom I was trying to convince to take medications some years ago, he said, "Doc, you all talk about pharmacotherapy, but what really helps me is farm therapy." This speaks to Kim's point that nature is so important. So anyway, I hope that you all have a relaxed Thanksgiving with your loved ones. And I hope some of the thoughts that I shared with you could be helpful in thinking about how to relax and have a stress-free, day, so to speak. Thank you all.
And thank you again, Dr. Keshavan, for this wonderful presentation. And to all attendees, just so you know, you'll be getting an email after with an evaluation form for the presentation, and we'll be posting some upcoming presentations on our website too, and hopefully we can do a part 2 in the future. Okay, thank you, everyone.